Welcome, everyone, to Alumni Relations in Uncertain Times, Best Practices for Engagement in an Economic Downturn. I'm your host, Jay Dillon, Executive Director of Alumni Relations at the University of California, Berkeley. We are so happy to have you with us this morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it may be. It's a good time to be with all of you. Before we begin, I want to call your attention to the slide that's on your screen with some quick tips about how to maximize your webinar experience. A few notes for you there. We hope you will submit questions to our panel using the Q&A function. This is important because we want to share out these questions with attendees after the webinar is over. And please note that these questions are not anonymous, and we will show who asked what. You can also upvote questions and comment on questions, which will help our moderators as we choose a few questions to answer at the end of our session today. We'll leave this slide up for just a few minutes as people are joining. I'm happy to say that as of right now, we have 495, 96 people with us on the webinar. Thank you. So we are very happy again to have you with us. And to welcome today a panel of Chief Alumni Officers across the country with over 8 decades of experience in alumni relations at public and private Research One universities. Our hope is that this discussion will be as informal and as in-depth as possible as we talk about the challenges that are facing advancement in this COVID-19 pandemic. The themes for today's session is as follows. First, we're going to talk about what now? Then we'll get into events, volunteers, chapters, and clubs. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions as a part of their registration. Over 100 questions came in, a lot around this next topic, digital engagement, marketing, and communications. Finally, we want to touch briefly on staffing and strategic planning. And finally, we want to leave as much of this session as possible for your individual questions. All right, let's begin. Today, we want you to learn a lot, have fun, and learn a lot. And I'm going to let each of my colleagues introduce themselves in response to this very first question. So I think we've all sent our COVID-19 email to alumni. We've postponed or canceled our alumni events. We've stood up a student emergency fund, all important things. So the question is, what now? And Cindy, I'm going to turn to you first.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Fredrick from the University of Virginia. And as Jay said, many of us have been at our institutions for a long time. I've been at UVA for over 2 decades, first running our volunteer service center and now leading our Office of Engagement for alumni, parents, and friends. And for me, during times of crisis, I find that people are more willing to ask for help and to offer help. And I think that's something that always surprises me a little bit because we don't do that on a regular basis. Sometimes when a crisis comes, it helps us find that place sooner. And so on March 16th, when we decided to cancel all in-person events for our alumni program, that was 120. And so what we had, our robust calendar was very robust, and in a matter of hours, there was nothing there. But on that same day, we got a call from one of our partners who we had been planning a radio talk show in the coming weeks about the primaries. And the person said, how can we help? We know that you don't have a lot of events going on. We're ready to go in 48 hours if you are. And so that quick offer of help changed the direction of our digital engagement very quick. More of our centers and schools started calling in and asking how they could promote their online programs. And I come from a place of saying yes, even though I don't know all the details and I might not have all the logistics figured out. It's just part of the DNA, but it also allows us to find our blind spots. And so I said, yes, let's do that. But what I found out was that our alumni calendar was not able to do that in a very easy way. So again, building on relationships, we worked with our vendors to do back-end coding. We worked with staff to redefine how we were going to do our work. and we were able to get things up on the calendar very quickly. Prior to COVID-19, 90% of all the alumni events on our calendar came from my office. And today, a third of them come from my office and 2/3 from our schools and units across our university. And for me, that's a way that we could help and be a service center. It was a win-win situation. Our alumni are interested in a variety of diverse things, and they could make that happen. And so I'm really inspired by what we were able to accomplish in a short period of time by working with our partners. It was a win-win situation. So sometimes for me, it takes a crisis to create better and new ways of working and engaging. And so my advice for what's now or what's next is very simple, and it's to ask for help when you need it and ask how I can help as much as you can. If we all do this, I think we'll be better and our lives will be better as well. So thanks so much. I'm glad to be part of this program.
Thank you, Cindy. I think that's wonderful advice. Ask for help and give help when you can. And Chris, picking up on that, what do you say? Now what?
Sorry about that, Jay. I thought I had it down. Thank you, Jay, for putting this together and for having me on. I'm honored to be part of the panel, and welcome to everybody who's joined us. We're over 600 now and thrilled to be part of this. My name is Chris Marshall. I've been in the alumni engagement business for the past 20 years, 12 of them running alumni programs at 2 institutions at Lehigh University, my alma mater, and 5 at Cornell University. And for the past 7, almost 8 years now, I've been involved in a consulting role in various capacities with lots of institutions, including a couple on the call right now. And what I'm saying to clients today in this capacity is literally now, as things have changed overnight in so many ways, is that we need to have a 30, 60, 90, 120-day plan in mind. You should take an inventory of everything that you're doing and take a look at what is the plan A if we were to go forward with it. As Cindy just said, we had to back off on a lot, but plan B being what's the virtual version of that going forward, and be ready to do both. I think the most immediate ones in the spring are around yield events for many institutions. There's alums who are involved in the admissions process, getting kids to say yes to your institution. There's a way to do that virtually now. And then a little bit longer term, the summer send-off challenge that many of us are facing now. I see a lot of schools trying to pivot, and how do we do a virtual summer send-off? And I think people are making the plans for that today. Several of my clients are working on that now. So that plan B for the virtual version of all these. And then a little bit longer term, my second point would be this, is that I think this is going to change everything we do in the future, Jay. Frankly, I think it's going to be different. We're going to have a plan A for a live event, and that will help with the depth of engagement we have with our constituencies. But we're going to have a plan B that'll go parallel with it, which is to open it up to anybody virtually. So you can have a breadth of engagement. A 500-person in-person event can be a 5,000-person virtually. I think we're going to start to see that become more the norm in our industry going forward. So, longer term, I'm thinking about this balance between the two, plan A, plan B, live, and then virtual. We're going to see more of that as an industry going forward. But thrilled to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Chris. And I think you couldn't be more spot on. And we will get into that digital engagement spread, I would call it, from that live experience, being in the room, to extrapolating that out across the world a little bit later today. Thank you again, Chris. And so Nancy, how about you? What's going on at Pitt?
Hi, everyone. First and foremost, I hope everyone is doing well and coping as well as can be expected in this new normal. I'm Nancy Merritt, Vice Chancellor for Alumni Relations at the University of Pittsburgh. I am approaching my 9-month anniversary at Pitt. Prior to Pitt, I was just down the road at Carnegie Mellon University. And prior to that, I was at my alma mater, Lehigh University. So I'm approaching almost 20 years in alumni relations. I've been in alumni relations my whole career. So to answer Jay's question, so now what? I know we're going to dive more into specifics later on in this webinar, but for now, I'll just simply say that this most recent crisis has really forced us as alumni relations professionals to be agile, to be creative, and to take a hard look at our current repertoire of programs and really assess their value. I think right now and in any time of crisis, Alumni Relations has a very vital role to play to ensure that our alumni and other respective constituencies are on the strongest footing possible once we get through this. If you look at your alumni network as what brings value to people's lives, it's really about how to best activate that network in support of one another and in support of the university. So with all that being said, I'll just end also kind of going to Chris's point as far as plans are concerned. I think from now on, we're all going to have, in addition to RAIN plans, we're going to have our pandemic plans.
What a future we will be living in, Nancy. Thank you for those comments. Julie, what's going on with the Bruins?
Good morning. Jay, I want to begin by thanking you for bringing us together today, and also to all of our alumni community, both on this call and are into this webinar right now. One of the things I've so appreciated about this family is our generosity in sharing whatever we have and whatever we're doing with each other. And now more than ever, that is so very much appreciated. So thank you. And I just echo everything my fabulous colleagues have said so far. The other key word I think is being nimble. To be able to move quickly, to adjust, and to really focus on how can we lift up our alumni community and support our community. What do you need? What can we do? And the other piece I would only add before we get into the specifics, Jay, is it's also that importance of self-care. We're on week 4, I think, is everybody in terms of working remotely. And how do we also continue to build that community among our staff, particularly as the challenges coming ahead where people, are nervous about their own future. So it's being nimble to lift up and support our communities wherever they are in alumni world, and also to really focus on how we do that for the teams that we're all leading. So I'll just end it at that.
Thank you, Julie. So we've heard some great things so far. Help yourself, help others, do what you can to plan, go live, and talking about being nimble. So Duane, we've got a lot of adjectives being thrown around here. What do you have to add to that?
It's hard to follow this group, let me tell you. So Nancy has been at Pitt for 9 months. I've been here at beautiful UT Knoxville for 9 weeks. And what a ride it has been, to say the least. But certainly, I look at this as a huge opportunity to really reimagine and rethink what we do to engage our alumni and students with the university. And with that being said, once we found out that we were working remotely, we pivoted quickly and made certain that first and foremost, all of our staff was equipped and ready to work remotely. So making sure that, laptops were available, they had access to the common drive, VPN, et cetera. So that was key, first and foremost, getting our staff situated so that they could adjust accordingly. And then, as you stated, we sent the emails, but, one of the most important things I think for us is making sure that we start to somewhat normalize working remotely. And so one of the first things we did is set up regularly scheduled Zoom meetings. So I meet with my staff from 9:30 to 10 o'clock a.m. every day. Just to check in, just so I can see their faces and let them know, what's happening at the leadership level at the institution, and certainly just wanting to hear from them. And I encourage all of them to also do that with their teams. Outside of that, this was a great opportunity for me to steward our alumni board members. And so that's what I've been doing since we've started working remotely, reaching out to all of our alumni board members. Some, I have yet to meet in person. And so I really wanted to leverage this time to really get to know them on a more personal level and let them know that, look, we're thinking about you. And if there's anything that we can do to help, please let us know, and making that a priority. And then I would say, lastly, in terms of what's next, this gave us an opportunity to take a step back and collaborate with some of our advancement partners, specifically our marketing and communications team. And they're included in our check-in Zoom meetings. And we created a Google Doc listing all the ways in which we want to engage our alumni in a meaningful way online. And let me tell you, the staff came up with some unbelievable ideas. And as a result of that collaboration, we were able to execute and implement some great initiatives. And I know that we're going to get into a little bit more details later on. And I can't wait to share with you some of that creativity. For myself, being here at UT Knoxville, like I said, it's been 9 weeks, but I've been in the alumni relations profession all of my career. And it's going on 21 plus years. I've worked at 3 previous other institutions, and I'm very happy to be here at a flagship land grant institution where, you know, we're just celebrating 225 years. Thank you.
Well, let's capture that last part, Duane, as a promo video for the incoming class at Tennessee Knoxville. So folks, attendees here with us live and those watching the recording, you know, I hope you get a little bit of a flavor of our panelists and their depth of expertise, some golden nuggets in there for sure. Let's get right into some of the questions that were submitted by you when you registered for the webinar. So one of them is around this theme of events and volunteers and chapters. So I'm going to read it because it's important to get it right. So in-person reunions and events, they drive so much of our traditional engagement in alumni relations land. Especially with our clubs and chapters. And one question is, now that we live in this new normal, how do we keep our alumni volunteers engaged when they no longer have events to produce or attend? And Cindy, I'm kicking this right to you because I know you guys have addressed this head on at UVA.
Yeah, well, I think, Jay, one of the things is that we have to remember what our foundation is. And our foundation in alumni engagement is to connect our alumni to each other and to the university for that mutual value proposition. It's to be able to be a benefit to each other. And so I'm a big proponent of in-person engagement, and I think that will come back, but we have learned to adapt to this digital world. And I don't think that community connection, we've seen the power in very 4 weeks that you can have community connection and engagement in a virtual realm. I think our problem initially was we just didn't know how. And so we really had to ask the experts. And Duane talked about relying on colleagues. So our folks in advancement operations helped us with technology and training on how to do this. I think our communication, that staying in touch. And so we stayed in touch with our key stakeholders and our experts and our alumni and our faculty. And so very early on, we moved our volunteer leaders meetings from monthly Zoom meetings to bi-monthly. And every week we're communicating, every day we're on the phone, because I think the other thing that we have seen is people are really hungry for that personal connection. So we have picked up the phone more than ever to check in with our volunteer leaders to seek their advice. We also sought advice from, you know, the director of online education at UVA. She knows how to do virtual program, you know, how to keep content relevant, how to manage the full flow, and ensure that we had social connection in these aspects as well. And so with all that advice, we had to learn very quickly. And I have seen that you can have the power of our foundation of engagement in a virtual space. And so our ideas from primarily, even from our alums, mainly our volunteer leaders, were abundant. One of the very first things that people said from our club leaders has said, how can we get involved in helping raise funds for these COVID funds? So several of our club presidents reached out to their constituents in their local areas, encouraging them to make a gift. We've also partnered with admissions, as was mentioned. We send postcards from the local clubs to accepted students with water bottle stickers. We partnered with our volunteer service program. April is Volunteer Community Service Month, and instead of having a month-long program of service, we're having one day, encouraging our folks to be kind, to write thank you letters, to make a call, and still have our values of service. But we also then transitioned existing events. Our dean of the library was scheduled to be up in Boston to talk about how the library was helpful in moving to online classes. We did that in a virtual space, in a webinar with about 50 people. And the interaction, there was a lot of chatting going back and forth. Hey, how's it going? Because they knew each other. So not only were we having a faculty member talk, but we had that connection there. Tonight, a faculty member is talking to our DC group about personal finance, but we also have a watch party tonight on the social network in New York. They're also having a meetup, which is what I've been doing at night, is watching Tiger King. So they're going to have a discussion on that. Our club leaders are very much involved, and they're moving to that transition very early. But we also have our lifetime learning faculty members. We asked them to say, hey, what can you do? 15 of them said, we'll do a webinar whenever you want. We looked at our website and how could we provide more resources and have a virtual UVA. And of all the events that we travel, or with our travel program that were canceled, we have faculty members that said, hey, you know what, we can't go to Spain, we can't go to Morocco, but let's have a happy hour. I'll give a talk, we'll have a glass of wine, and we'll have a cab travels happy hour. And so I firmly believe that our alums want to connect in any way. We just have to provide a space and forum, whether it's virtual or in person. And social distancing for me is not going to be an issue. Our folks are coming together. So I think it's the sky's the limit. It's just our imagination and then relying on our friends and our partners and asking for the help we need to make it happen.
Again, Cindy coming with some knowledge and inviting us all to ask for help. You have done such wonderful things with engaging volunteers already. Let's turn to the left coast, the West Coast. Julie, what about this keeping volunteers engaged, clubs and chapters and events?
Thanks so much, Jay. And as I said at the beginning, I'm going to run through some things pretty quickly, but anything that is being done by Team UCLA, we were welcome and look forward to sharing that with anybody. So about a year ago, we launched our virtual presence through 24 hours of programming on our virtual Alumni Day. We took a day and brought the world to Westwood, and we ventured out into the world as well. So we're so blessed to have been at this for a while. And we've moved nearly everything we're doing into the virtual space. However, we're also using this time to check in with our network leaders around their leadership and their needs and where they'd like to head. A first request from our alumni was around, again, that issue of self-care. And so we have got hundreds of alumni that are currently tuned in to do mindfulness exercises with us and workout options, some led by our former student athletes, and some of them are Super Bowl ring wearers. So we have thousands of folks tuned in for those. Each network continues to plan meetings, virtual book clubs, happy hours, and services, such as engaging families, friends, and schools in letter writing campaigns for first responders and healthcare providers. That's been a huge success. Our diversity networks have launched a weekly diversity digest, which provides space for our conversations around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And they've also launched virtual camps for networks to focus on things such as websites, bylaws, leadership, and calendars. And there's been 30 virtual meetups for these groups over the past 2 weeks alone. And our networks have continued to lead in the scholarship area. Over 2,000 of our volunteers read over 1,900 scholarship applications, all done virtually. And we have an alum that recently has stepped up to support our courting ceremony for our first gen alumni program. And we're going to be doing all of that virtually as well. We're also partnering with our campus colleagues around what happens with commencement and senior rituals and traditions in this remote space. And finally, we've had a tremendous focus on our career space. We're amplifying our resources for our alumni throughout the career lifespan. And just as you are doing, we're talking with our alums almost on a daily basis who are dealing with job loss at this time. So we're focused on mobilizing our alumni to partner with our students also moving to this uncertain job market, including providing internships in what's now a remote world. And our career portal, our UCLA One, is our anchor, but in addition, we've multiplied our podcasts, webinars, career coaching, and have 5 distinct e-communications that go out to segmented populations of students and our alumni. And finally, I wrote to all of our alumni yesterday asking them what they needed in this current career space and what they could offer to lift up and support our Bruin family. So again, happy to share all of that with you offline and more. And thank you in advance for your willingness to do the same with us. So I'll stop at that, Jay.
Thank you, Julie. I think so much of what you shared takes us into thinking about the digital space, which is really the meat of our next question. And so again, this was something submitted prior to the webinar recording. And also we've seen a number of questions come in around digital engagement. So we'll spend some time on this one. I would say it's probably fair that most of us were thinking about transitioning more of our programs, alumni and communications, into the digital space prior to this crisis. And now that need all of a sudden has been accelerated virtually overnight and putting us into that virtual space very quickly. And for some of us, that's not an area of comfort. So the question really here is, now with the added pressure of social distancing, how do we quickly iterate and innovate to create and drive engagement through digital platforms? And for this one, Chris, I'm going to turn to you. I know you've got a lot of clients thinking about this right now.
Yeah. Great question. I appreciate the folks the theme that came through in a lot of the advanced questions. And my response is really, it's simple. Just we got to experiment. We have to be willing to experiment and try some new things. And I'll share an example of one of my clients is doing. It's two words: experiment, but have some focus. So the experiment part is starting small, doing a few things with a smaller audience and growing it where possible. Not being, another part of that is not being worried about production value. Good is fine, right? If Jimmy Fallon can interview Russell Wilson and his daughter interrupt a national broadcast with her tooth being missing, then it's fine for us to have those same things with our alumni. We are now, as a society, accustomed to this being the production value. You don't have to be perfect. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And then the focus part, I'll share with you what dear friend and great colleague at Indiana University, JT Forbes and Tricia Stump under JT and their team are put together really a 5-point plan to think about the next 30, 60, 90 days. And those 5 points are very simple, and it provides focus for the entire 70 some odd person team. And the points are this. Number one is a campaign of caring and empathy, they call it, which is them reaching out to their top volunteers and board members by phone and having individual conversations with them. And they're going to expand that. They're going to start small with their board and expand that to larger audiences over time. Great initiative there. A virtual book club. We're seeing this. A lot of institutions are running versions of this. They have 600, 700 people signed up for the virtual book club, and they have some really good interaction going on there. And it's a way to keep that their audience in tune and connected to each other. They've pivoted their entire lifelong learning program from an in-person version to an online version and done it pretty quickly. They have a tradition of several hundred thousand people showing up on campus for an event in June. They're already planning it to be virtual right now. So taking all that online is what they've done. Their fourth one is digital alumni communities. They're building out a brand new tool right now. They've accelerated it, of course. The planned rollout was a little bit longer. Now they're going faster. I'll give a couple of tips here. There's a few companies that are offering some free services right now. Graduate, for example, is offering a free business directory for any school that wants to launch it. And a company called, I want to make sure I get it right, Bright Crowd is offering a free class webpage for classes thinking about, there's a question that came up earlier about what do you do with the class of 2020 that's leaving, and how do you keep them engaged? Well, this company is offering a virtual solution to that group right away to stay connected to each other, and it's for free for any school that wants to do it. I'll put the URLs in the chat so people can see it when I get. And the last one, they're focusing their content. Their fifth point for them is they're helping alumni navigate a difficult economy, and they're going to take that theme of around economy and again provide content through their resources they have internally through their alumni, and offer help to their alumni population. So those 5 constructs are how they're focusing what they're going to be doing going forward. And I like that model a lot.
Thank you, Chris. Well, those are 5 golden nuggets again. And we will have this recorded. Come back and watch Chris take you through it one more time. Another piece here that's coming up in the chat and also in the questions is just some very specific ideas. Can we share anything about individual success stories around using platforms? Chris, you mentioned a few of them already. So any other platforms or specific social media sites that you feel like are where everybody needs to be right now?
I think all of us, there's different options out there for sure, and all of them should be leveraged fully right now. I think this is a time where you can take resources internally that may have not paid attention to that online platform as much, and now drive it fully. Really get some FTE time behind it and get that content on there. There's companies like Graduate, Bright Crowd, People Grove. There are many others. I'm going to draw a blank, but when others are talking, I'll think of them and I'll put them in the chat. But there are plenty, and I'm sure our panelists have ideas that they're using right now as well. But those are the ones that I see being the big solution right now in this space for lots of reasons, and there'll be others I'll put in the chat as we go along here.
Thank you, Chris. Well, what you said right out of the gate with your response about taking risks, but having some focus, I think is great. Duane, so again, you're 9 weeks into the job. I'm 3 months into the job here at UC Berkeley. What are some things that you're trying or seeing around digital engagement?
Yeah, I agree with Chris, and I'm quite sure my esteemed colleagues on this panel would agree as well. Certainly you can't be afraid to leverage third-party vendors to help you scale what you do and reach more of your alumni base. And we're exploring People Grove and Evertrue, and I can go on and on, PBC Guru for the virtual alumni book clubs. But also I would say, take a look at the resources that you currently have internally. So, we're an iModule school at UT Knoxville, and there are certain things that lend us to creating. But also looking at your social media sites and the activity there, and seeing how you can ramp up, what you do to again use that as a way to engage your alumni and students online. So some examples of what we've done here at UT Knoxville is we created a Smoky distancing guide. So Smoky is our mascot, and essentially it's just a landing page on our website. And when you go to that landing page, we have activities for kids. You could download Smokey's favorite homemade recipes, Smokey's favorite songs, top hits. There's a coloring activity book for kids, adult beverage menu item if you wanted to create something like that. But it was something that our team collectively together with our marketing and communications team came up with, and it's been a huge hit. We've had a ton of activity and new web visits as a result of that. We also created, as you see on my background, a customized Zoom background for all of our alumni and faculty and staff and to use. And there's about 5 or 6 of these that's branded T Alumni. We created a private Facebook group. So everyone has a Facebook page, but we wanted to create a Facebook group and leverage this group of engaged alumni to encourage them to go out and promote various activities or initiatives at the university level, because we already identified these alums as being engaged based on the number of comments and the likes throughout the year. And so that private Facebook group has been very instrumental to us. And we created multiple social media campaigns to engage our alumni. We've also written several stories on our alums, just recognizing them for stepping up in this, COVID-19 era, if you will, and our alumni have certainly appreciated that. And then one thing that we launched earlier this week, which was a huge hit, and we're doing this on a weekly basis. It's our weekly Facebook Live series where we feature our alumni, showcase them based on their area of expertise or topic where they have a talent to share. We call this series Home Sweet Home with our alumna or alumnus. And it was phenomenal, the first one that we had earlier in the week. And we're going to be featuring more alumni in the area of art, music, cooking, fitness, mindfulness, etc. And so those are some examples of ways in which we've really stepped up our game on the virtual scene. The last thing I'll say is that with our alumni board, and maybe some of the panelists already use this technology, but we're looking to also work with Director Point. Director Point is a software platform for board management. And so it gives you it's a great way for you to connect with your board members, for them to connect to each other through this portal. You can access it through your smartphone. So there's an app that you can download, and we're really looking forward to launching that in the days to come.
So many great ideas in 9 weeks, Duane. Well done. And you're getting some love in the chat here from a few alumni of Tennessee Knoxville talking about how much they enjoy that smoky theme. So keep those good ideas coming. More to say on digital engagement later here in the conversation, but I'd like to pivot for a moment to another question that was broadly asked in the registration and also some that have come through here live. And that's around sort of staffing, strategic planning. What should we be doing now? Is there anything we can do now to prepare? So here's the question. We live in this COVID-19 pandemic era now. As we think about what advancement might look like in the post-COVID-19 era, is there anything that we can do now as alumni leaders to structure our organizations, put together our strategic plans to be ready for what's next? And so, Nancy, I'm going to turn to you on this one.
Thanks, Jay. So at Pitt, we kicked off our strategic planning process technically in December, and we're currently in the process of drafting it. So with this most current crisis, what that has really brought to the forefront in numerous ways is the number of silos that exist at the university and just the lack of coordination on a lot of things. And so now when we're drafting the strategic plan for alumni relations, we know that one of our major priorities has to be and has to address an integrated alumni relations model at the university. So how can we be a hub and create spokes to the other entities around our regional campuses and just departments and colleges as well, to have this fully integrated model so that we're really adding value to the lives of alumni and to Pitt itself. So we know that that is definitely going to be a part of our strategic planning process, and we'll figure out the structure as part of that down the road. But tied to this aspect, and to give a more concrete example of something that's currently happening at Pitt to try and break down these silos, is that we put together, we're calling it the Building Virtual Community Task Force, which I'm sure could have had a better name, but that's what we're going with right now. And we asked our senior leadership, like, who should be involved in this task force to really try and build community with our students, with our alumni at this very critical time. And so it is a very large group that we're organized through Microsoft Teams. And then we did a lot of brainstorming, ideas gathering, and tried to organize those ideas and the group itself then into various working groups. So there's one based on constituencies like the class of 2020. There's one based on programs like webinars. And so we have brought people then from across campus and put them in the same virtual space so that they can collaborate and try and provide meaningful content to alumni. And to our students for that matter. And so one piece of advice that I would give to everyone on this webinar is that if some group like this does not already exist or has not formed at your university, that don't wait for it to happen. Like, you can be the convener, and that's good. That's the only way that this work is going to get done in a collaborative way.
Well, you said it, Nancy. Perhaps there's nothing more challenging than breaking down those silos. And at a time like this, at least in my experience here at Berkeley, those silos are coming down quickly as people really strive to come together, work together for one another. And I think you're right that in alumni relations, this is the nature of what we do. We convene people together. And so I echo your advice to everyone watching us live and on the recording, be that person to lead in that way. So picking up on what you were saying, Nancy, about integration strategic planning, turning to Chris for a minute. Chris, I think you've got half a dozen clients that are in strategic planning mode right now. What can you share with us? What can we learn from them?
Yeah, what's interesting is that the pits of the world are moving forward and doing it in a collaborative but virtual way. And then you'll hear from, I'm going to hand this off to Julie in a second, and what UCLA is doing is slightly different. I mean, it's not that they're going to stop strategic planning. We'll address it in different ways. But what the theme that Nancy hit on that's true at any university that's on this webinar, large, complex, decentralized institutions, it's absolutely true. But even down to a liberal arts college, even independent schools see these issues where the collaboration that happens coming out of the alumni office with key stakeholders on campus, whether it's a partner in admissions or in communications, but sometimes you have alumni relations professionals in a different college or school at your university that doesn't report into the central office that you may oversee. And the coordination and collaboration and alignment that has to be there is, I think, I was saying this for the last years, that the alumni relations program of the future is one that at the center, they're conducting the orchestra and the music plays in different areas. I think that's going to be our model even more so now, more importantly. And so if you're not already collaborating with key partners on campus, other entities that do alumni engagement in some form or fashion, now's the time to start doing it, breaking down those walls. And when it comes to strategic planning, involving them in a process where they're creating the plan with you is more important than having a plan that gets created and happens to them. So we're seeing more and more of our clients involving stakeholders across a large enterprise with representation from multiple stakeholders to sort of create that plan. And I'll transition for you, Jay, if it's all right, to Julie, if you want to throw in a question in between. But Julie and I have been talking about this quite a bit, and the thought of taking a pause and what impact it's having for UCLA. Julie, want to just take it away?
Thanks, Chris. And Nancy, I really appreciate and resonate with your comments, and not avoiding your question, Chris, but doing a walk back down memory lane. It was in 2013, Nancy, that Chris encouraged us to embrace the phenomenon of silos of excellence. Not that we don't embrace them, but in the alumni world, we can take the lead in breaking them down. So thank you, Chris. And where we're at now is really looking at a pivot, because we are at a place that we've pretty much worked through our last strategic plan as a checklist. And but like you, the one thing that's really impacting us right now is where are we going to land? And we're so much uncertainty about that. And Jay, perhaps another topic down the line is thinking a lot about resources, because, for example, like all of us, we're experiencing a real impact in our travel program. Our budget is 60% funded by the university. The other comes from revenue generated from the association, and that revenue is in question right now. Our business development issues are in question. And so we're not quite sure what resources we're going to be able to have to support the plan that we're working on, and where is it that we're going to land? When are we going to come back together? All of those things have put us in a place in conversation with Chris that, again, we're not saying stop. We're not even saying pause. We're saying we're taking some time to pivot. While we gather information, how the world is going now, and hopefully some more information on where we're going to land, but really impacted by those funding resources as well. So Jay, perhaps another day, another topic around that.
Thank you, Julie. And we will be sharing with all of you at the end of this session some opportunities to come together as an alumni engagement community of practice. And I also want to point out too that we will be sharing out the questions, the chat, and also our individual email addresses in a follow-up note later this week. And we hope you will take advantage of that. Many of you have written in the Q&A and also in the chat specific questions about something that a panelist has said, and I invite you to connect with them directly. Well, this takes us to the time for some audience questions, and boy, there are a lot. And we've got some thoughtful insights already to build off on. So now let's get to some of those burning questions. We actually had over 100 of them come in, which is amazing. Thank you, everyone. But here are some themes that we're seeing. One theme is about how do we get started with digital engagement. And so Duane, I'm going to ask you to answer this one if that's okay, because you're new in your role and you've seen this at so many other institutions as well. Here's the question, what if I work at a school that has little to no social media engagement now? We've got a Facebook page, we've got a LinkedIn group. what should we be thinking about next?
That's an excellent question. You know, a couple of things come to mind. One, really take a look at the brain trust on your campuses and really figuring out, you know, who may be leading in this area or doing something that you could partner or collaborate with to bring more added value. So I would start there first, you know, find out, survey the campus and find out, you know, who are the SMEs or the subject matter experts on this area, who's taking the lead, who's doing it well, and seeing how you can partner and collaborate and provide additional value. I think the other thing is just leveraging your social media presence. I mean, it's not difficult to, you know, start something on social media. And what you could think about also is maybe sending out a short survey to your alumni to find out, you know, who's on social media and who is, you know, leveraging social media in a very robust way to identify your social media influencers, and then leveraging them so that they can help promote and get the word out about what you're doing as an association. So that's just at the ground level, especially for those that are just starting out. But I think, as I believe it was Chris earlier, you know, you can't be afraid and certainly get online and do some research. Oh, but here's the other thing. Talk to your colleagues. So being here at UT Knoxville, I'm a part of the SEC conference. And then also, you know, I'm a board member of CAAE, the Council of Alumni Association Executives. And then on top of that, I'm a part of a group here that's part of the UT system. So my colleagues at UT Martin and so on and so forth, UT Chattanooga, I get on the phone, send an email. We've done a couple of Zoom meetings, and I ask, you know, what are you doing? And just to get some ideas. So, you know, those are some simple things that I think that all of us can do based on the resources that we have on campus and the networks that we have in this profession.
Thank you, Duane. That's great. Some golden nuggets again in there. And I hope people will go back and watch and take notes of what you said. This next question is a little bit more focused on collaboration. And so, Cindy, I'd like to kick it to you because it's about working with other marketing communications units on campus and auxiliaries that might be separate, that might also be communicating to alumni on behalf of the institution. So here's the question. How do we work collaboratively to message to alumni if others are doing the same? And is there such a thing as too much digital email and specific engagement?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And part of that is how do we leverage and those partnerships and those relationships. And so I think we have a strong communication outreach for our alumni, but we want to reach them in a way that's not overwhelming. We want good open rates. We want them to do it. So I think that partnership. So if you have not reached out to folks, I think the thing is to let people know what you're doing, to call them out. We're seeing a lot of alumni digests now, and we have one, and that's a great way. But I would encourage you not just to reach out and do a digest of what you're doing in your own silo. How can you offer that as a service center support to also promote things from the other partners that we have? So I think leveraging those connections, finding out an easy way for them to tell you what you're doing and say, hey, we can broaden your program space by doing this collectively. It will benefit for everyone if we have that strategic planning that we have, but it's all about communication and setting that up, clarity of that thought. For our engagement people across the university, we have a senior director for global engagement that's bringing those folks together on a weekly basis. We have just a simple spreadsheet on letting everyone know what's the events coming out so that we can work together because we don't want people to unsubscribe. So I think the biggest thing is finding that win-win for everyone and making a strong case, and you'll get the buy-in.
Well, creating buy-in is another thing that alumni relations professionals are great at. And here's our third ranked top question for you, which is about creating buy-in with alumni themselves. Nancy, I'd like to ask you this one. So how do we balance some presumptions or assumptions we might make about how alumni needs are shifting and will shift in this new environment versus the way we've thought about their needs in the past? How do we get at that information?
So I'll answer this in a couple of ways. And if any of my colleagues from Pitt are on right now, they're probably going to roll their eyes at me. But if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? At the base, you have the physiological needs that need to be met, which, food, water, sleep, all that stuff, which realistically, we in alumni relations can't help with. But the very next thing on top of that, the layer, is safety. And that is safety and security. So, thinking through employment and financial anxiety that many of our alums are experiencing right now, I think that is probably a very specific area that we can presume we can add a lot of value in that space. Because if we can't leverage our alumni networks to help in that space, then a lot of the other stuff we would do probably doesn't matter as much, right? If you're bought into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the other thing is we do have to ask them. We can't over survey our alumni though. So at Pitt, we're actually in a good spot because of my newness at the institution. We just closed our alumni attitude survey in March. So we'll be viewing those results shortly. Granted, the results won't necessarily be representative of how they would answer in a COVID-19 era. We closed it right before all this happened. So, but we'll be looking closely at that. But the other thing that we're doing right now is focus grouping. So last night, because there's a lot of concern right now about the class of 2020 specifically, and how we can across the university help them be on the strongest footing possible once they graduate. And so acknowledging that the people in our alumni population who probably empathize with them the most are those who graduated during the Great Recession, we are starting to do some focus grouping with the classes of 2008 and 2009 to ask them, what resources were helpful to you? What resources do you wish you had? And then really provide that specifically to the class of 2020. But I think there are other scenarios there that we can utilize some of those ideas.
Thank you, Nancy. I know you've got a big charge there from the leadership at Pitt to do everything you can to help this graduating class and leverage the alumni network. And that gets to our final audience question for today, which I'm going to ask my colleague Julie to reflect on a little bit, because she shared some of the things that UCLA is doing already. How can we leverage the alumni network now to think about not only the graduating students, but also the incoming class in the fall? And are there specific things, Julie, that you feel are needs that are different now that alumni are particularly poised to help with?
I think that's a great ongoing question, Jay. And I think now more than ever, we've just got to take a pause and to really listen to what our alumni are saying and what their needs are, and check in through multiple ways. And one of the things that we've started doing, had a really impactful one yesterday, for example, was some Zoom focus groups where the best we can there do some face-to-face communicating, and then getting back to what I said initially, being nimble enough to adjust. And I think part of it too is UCLA, we pride ourselves in being optimists. How do we keep the optimism going when people are also dealing with a lot of fear around the economy and where we're going to land? So again, how can we continue to lift up and build community while really staying in touch and listening, using multiple tools, and then being nimble enough to adjust, like so many of the colleagues have said.
Thank you, Julie. And I think we are all tired of being in reactive mode. There's a lot of chat about that going on right now. We're all eager to be moving forward and talking about the proactive things that alumni could do. So thank you everyone for submitting your questions. And again, we are going to share out all of those questions with you after the call. As we near the end of today's session, I'd like to invite each of my colleagues to give their 30-second NPR spot here to wrap up some of their final thoughts. And so let's kick it back to the beginning where we started with Cindy. Let us hear what you have to say.
Excellent. I would say reach out to your alumni, your faculty, your key stakeholders, and ask them how they can help and how we can help them. Our resources are vast, and our alumni can really help us in all of the things that we've talked about. They're eager, they're willing, and as Julie said, let's listen to them, and then also let's then ease the burden of complexity to allow them to shine and thrive and help us drive this engagement.
Excellent. Duane.
Thank you, Jay. I would say first and foremost, we're all blessed to be in this profession. You think about it, you know, we talked about some of our challenges of having to, you know, transition from working in the office to now working remotely. But there's so much, you know, pain and suffering happening right now. And I just want, you know, us to all put this into proper perspective. We're blessed. We have an opportunity to do something great. Don't forget that. You know, let's lean on one another. This is a great profession with a group of colleagues all over the country, all over the world that's willing to help. So certainly lean on that in this moment in time, and just take care of yourself. Stay home and help flatten this curve.
All right, thank you. Brought to you by Duane for president. All right. And following that, Chris, what's your pitch for us in 30 seconds or less?
Well said, and I couldn't agree more. Stay safe, stay healthy. But when it comes to work, I cope by getting busy, and I'm a survivor by nature. So I'm going to just push forward on things. So when it comes to the work I need to do, I'm going to keep encouraging people to experiment, innovate, iterate, be agile. Don't worry about production value. Be good. Don't be perfect. Just keep putting things out there, and you're going to hit the mark. Getting to the question that I saw coming up on the chat and was addressed by a few colleagues about what's the value add. We need to ask our alumni that and add that value when we do this experimenting and try different things. So keep at it, keep working, add value, and have fun and stay safe.
Amen. And keep preaching that, Chris. We all appreciate you and your leadership at this time. Nancy, what say you?
Well, I agree with everyone and say ditto. But also just, you know, in times of crisis, it calls for, you know, being big and bold and audacious. So, you know, I challenge all of us, the entire profession, to be really creative and try and find really big, audacious solutions to help our alumni and help our institutions.
Thank you, Nancy. And for a final word, Julie.
Thank you. You know, we live in such a relationship-driven world, a relationship-driven career. This is just an opportunity for us to think about that differently. And I know for me as an extrovert, I know this has been extremely difficult, but to take a page from my friend in orange there is I'm also very grateful and cognizant that I've got a job to zoom into every day. So let's continue to support each other, reach out, as been said, and continue to think about how we can be nimble enough to lift up our alumni communities and support one another.
Thank you, Julie. And thank you to all of the panelists for your time today and coming together in such quick and short order to bring some insights to our greater community. This is, I think, as many of us have shared, where our industry shines. And I am someone who wakes up every morning and believes that working together for one another, we will get through this and we will become even better advocates for why engaging alumni is so important to higher education and education writ large. So with that in mind, we do want to leave you with some additional resources as you navigate this ever-changing new normal. And so what we are proposing, what you see on your screen now, we're calling an alumni engagement community of practice. And what we would like to do is stand up weekly coffee chats perhaps bi-weekly, offered alternately in the early morning or late afternoon Pacific time, so that we can really reach our global audience. We've had folks on here in Hong Kong, Australia, Ireland today. Thank you everyone for staying up or getting up early to join us. The topics for this community of practice, you see some examples there, some we've touched on already. We'd like to invite you to find collaborators for this community by looking at the questions that have been asked and who has asked the questions. And again, we will share those out in a few days. And then look to your email inbox for some upcoming dates and times, and also a recording of this webinar. And finally, just to share here on the screen for you now and also for the recording, our email addresses of our esteemed panel here today. We do look forward to being in touch with you. So our contact information is on the screen, and we will share that out as well. Now, be well, stay healthy, and thank you so much for joining us today. Take care, and bye-bye.